All right. Yeah, let's fucking kick it in there, man.
Welcome back, folks, to the Lost Beat 6 show, Beefer Book Club edition.
The Beaver Book.
This is like the final, I think, Hawaii installment we have, basically, because we read the books we bought in Hawaii, I think, at this point. And then we're going to have some other things to talk about, because I got a few things to chat about.
Oh, certainly, yeah. I've been doing some video gooming and some movie watching. So I've got the movie I watched, I won't talk about it too much because I don't want it to be the Red Letter Media recap podcast, but I watched Red Rocket. Like,
what's funny is I watched Pig.
Oh shit, okay.
Yeah, and I actually have a good story behind that one.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, we can.
And I think I think it was covered. Actually, it was covered in a previous episode of the Beat for Book Club, which I can link. I don't know. It's in June. It's from July. It's from July. Okay. Whatever. We're doing a bunch of book clubs in July because we didn't have any guests, and we're doing a bunch of book clubs now because I'm still trying to book some guests. So, and we have a lot of work going on at the studio and just kind of get my own ducks in a pond and things like that. Ducks in a row in a pond. And
trying to get them fucking ducks.
Get them ducks. But yeah, so I just because we're on those movies, I'll just recap because I saw Pig about a few days ago. And
okay, so
because
I'm also still I was literally thinking today that I need to watch that.
It is one of the better movies I saw from last year, and I didn't see a lot of movies because I was very apathetic. I was even apathetic to go back to the theater. The whole point of the show that we went to go see is we all got together with some friends, and one of them, I will not name, one of them actually decided to pivot, and we all just, and he bought tickets for Space Jam 2.
Jesus Christ.
And I'm really wishing, I'm kind of like more annoyed it makes a good story, it's like, we're going to go see this really well-made movie about this, struggling former chef dealing with grief. And
he had a last minute change of heart and went and bought tickets for fucking Space Jam 2.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It's pretty
this would be like the second time you've seen Space Jam 2, right?
No, it's the first time. The only time I saw Space Jam 2.
Oh, so that was the time you were going to see Space Jam.
Yeah, that was the time, and we talked about that. The whole like, oh, this isn't a movie. This is a Nike commercial and a Beats commercial and a Warner Brothers commercial.
Yeah, it was a commercial for the new Warner Brothers.
It was not a movie. It was like when you hear about like Jack and Jill, like Sony Pictures sort of product placement stuff. This is the Warner Brothers version of it, where it's like, it's LeBron James. He's going to bring in a whole new audience, or the same audience that you would normally get, and nostalgia
it's like
from
the
previous
product placement movie was there. It's like the product placement movie was there, and then with like insert name here for like whatever franchise they decided to like staple onto it, and like they just decided that Spam tested the best. And so they just searched for.
I think him moving to LA was part of the whole like, I'm gonna be a Laker so I can work on movies and stuff, and he's been doing that. But like, this was like this is the next Michael Jordan, LeBron James thing. And anyway, we're talking about Space Jam 2. I don't want to talk about Space Jam 2.
Yeah, that's so big.
I want to talk about. I don't really want to talk about Pig that much because I want people to see it.
Yeah, true.
In a weird way, where it's like, but it had like all these sort of nuances of like, because I was in Napa when I was watching it, and Napa has its own like I like Napa a lot, and I'm starting to understand like the elements of food and foodie culture, and there's like a level of like I'm starting to kind of realize there's a whole foodie thing going on in a class level where I've seen people who I probably. I think they're fans of like famous chefs. I remember I was like some sort of wealthy kind of yuppie young women. They were talking about like, they were in LA. We were right next to Major Domo, the Dave Chang restaurant in Los Angeles. And they mentioned that. And I knew that in the back of my head because, like, I'm a huge fan of him and just in general his style and the whole thing and Momofuku and all that. And I remember him going, and I don't know why, but this is like my inner fandom where I'm just like, I'm a bigger fan than you. I don't know where I get that, but they go, oh my gosh, Momofuku's, or sorry, Major Domo, that Dave Ching restaurant's right over there. I'm like, they could be just as big of a fan, but they came off really vapid.
Yeah.
When they do that. And I was in a couple restaurants in Napa, or actually in one restaurant in Napa that came off extremely vapid like that. And like I said, I don't want to like, and of course this is a very wealthy neighborhood or a wealthy community. And
I think I think anything that comes out of their mouths is just going to sound fucking like it's just disgusting and insincere.
It just reminds me. It reminds me of the Anthony Bourdain chapter in Medium Raw, called "The Rich Eat Different Than You and I," and where it was essentially like how he was going to this extremely well-to-do, like almost like Club of Rome tier, secret society kind of like 1% event in the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
And he found out like the guy who was catering the event, or was like they were just eating these really like overcooked chicken drumsticks, and the guy was like charging him like, you know, like $20-$30 a plate, you know,
Jesus
when they were like probably worth like a few dollars to make that whole thing, you know, per, you know, plate, because it's just like they want this.
I feel like half the price for like really expensive food is just it's just the experience of like burning money, you know, like just wiping your ass with money.
Yeah, Vegas does that too. There's a lot of Vegasness about that.
Yeah.
And I like. The thing is, like, I'm a guy who likes the restaurants in the restaurant. Like, I'm fascinated by the restaurant culture, and the kind of, and almost a different romantic notion of what that is. And obviously, I haven't really worked on a line, but I can kind of relate to people who would work on a line, and that kind of. I don't know, that kind of hardcore, like, dedicate your life to a craft mentality. And it's a strange, like, I don't know, like it was a whole thing. The only thing that bugged me about the restaurant I went to, that for that specific one that I noticed, I was just kind of people watching at the bar. And they had this really kind of it was this sort of, you know, like it was an Italian restaurant. I will not tell you who I will not tell the name of the restaurant. And the food was amazing. Everything was amazing, but they had this music that was extremely, and this is like I said, this is a me thing, and it's something I would only notice, or other people. But it was like this sort of awkward. It's like this sort of lounge jazz guitar, bossa nova beat. And they're singing like pop tunes, like 60s, 70s, 80s pop tunes.
Yeah.
And I think I lost it. I think they were singing like Beatles songs, like, you know, like All You Need Is Love with the bossa nova, like Light My Fire. We've seen, like, they've done things like this before, but it's so Muzak-y. Yeah. It was sort of like, like the audience, it was so built for that kind of like strangely like vapid bourgeois audience that probably cares more about the name of the place they're going to than the actual experience of the food they're eating. The status of going to that restaurant. And so it's a strange, like a thing for me where I'm like, but that the music was standing out because I think at one point they played the Bee Gees, a beat, Staying Alive, in a bossa nova lounge beat, and I think
that's incredible.
it's incredible in abstract and in concept, but when you're there and you're just like, you can tell by the way I move my whatever. I'm a woman.
I think hearing one Muzak bossa nova cover of like an old pop song is fine, but then when you hear 20 of them in a row, it's like madness inducing.
and someone suggested to me, and I was telling him the story that he suggested to me, that that's not even a bad idea. We should come up with an idea of what kind of playlist you would make for a very high end Italian restaurant without doing Frank Sinatra tunes, without doing Nino Rota Godfather tunes, without the bossa nova. I kind of have to figure this out now, to what I want to do, and so it's just kind of a new challenge for me because I don't know exactly what I would do. Part of me would like simple. I know we're not on this whole tangent. We're going to talk about Hawaii in a minute here.
We got to write the we got to write the like Brian Eno music for airports, but we got to do the Lost Beat 6 music for overpriced Italian restaurants.
Because I went to I was sort of comparing it to the day before, and I will name this restaurant. I went to Bouchon, which is Thomas Keller's restaurant, the day before, and that place is a little more lively, a little more casual. It's actually more money than the other place I went to. But I enjoy myself a lot more there because there's just a vibe that's like, yeah, it's like it's high end, and it's the same people eating there that annoy me that I'm also eating with. Actually, the bar, I was talking with the lady at the bar, and she was very kind of she was just like, I'm just getting out of town. I'm trying to avoid work right now.
Yeah,
she just came back, drove from Berkeley. But and so that's the whole thing about that we can kind of like, okay, cool. But they were playing like Ry Cooder's Shangri-La, Poor Man's Shangri-La from the Chavez Ravine concept record, which is a whole, like, it's a deep cut from a very kind of musician's favorite, a musician's musician kind of thing. And I love that record. I love that song. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, this is great. Like, so it's got, and then the next day it was like the most sort of cliche experience musically in a thing. And maybe this is something I would say, like, anyway, to kind of maybe wrap this up, I would say, like, there's a part of me that, I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of on a Stooges binge for a little bit, where I'm just like, you should use, like, proto-punk would be kind of interesting in Italian. Simplified food for simplified ingredients, simplified music, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. You could say that with the lounge stuff, too, where it's just a guitar and a bass and a vocal, like, I don't know.
It depends on the vibe that you're going for.
I don't know. Hey, internet, hit us up.
Start the world's first punk rock Italian restaurant.
If you have songs you want to put, this is we can ask the audience this now because maybe we have one. What songs would you put in an Italian restaurant that would suit the vibe of a high end restaurant without being Sinatra, Nino Rota, Sicilian, and or Nino Rota's Godfather. I'm just assuming it was Sicilian, but and like bossa nova lounge. And I like a lot of bossa nova lounge, but just not like, it was so on the nose for like pop songs you heard before.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I don't know. I mean, like, maybe like Dario Russo.
The subject do our homework. That'll be the subject of our
get the Danger 5 guy
playlist.
So, all right, that was my little rant for the day, because I kind of wanted to throw that your way because I think you'd get a kick out of it.
Yeah, that's fucking. Yeah, the weird world of weird world of restaurant playlists. Yeah. You got to have that like perfect, like you got to have that perfect like 2 or 3 hours where it's like you don't repeat any songs. You don't repeat songs, so it's like you can go and eat without like the customers getting like pissed off, and like you want it like probably just outside. You probably want it just outside of like what a normal dinner length would be. So it's like you can every time you come in, it's like it feels like you're like hearing like a new sort of scrambling of the music, but it's like only about 3 hours of music or so.
And it should be noted, I'm like a dog and a squirrel when it comes to house music. When I hear something I know and like I know nobody else knows, I go, squirrel! Oh, I know that song. I'll stop mid conversation to go, I know that song. And so if there's a noise enough, like if it's a song I actually like and never heard before, I will Shazam it.
Well, because without like saying, words, it's like it's like our playlists are gonna be like fucking unlistenable to like normies. It's gonna be like no recognizable. But
they might not be there to actively listen to the music either, because it came off extremely like You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, true.
Dinner music's not supposed to. It's not supposed to draw your attention to the music. You're drawing attention to the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
in which you eat the food, and it enhances everything with that. So, I mean, challenge accepted. But and maybe we'll come up with something. Maybe I'll put it on my blog and put it on Medium and see what everybody thinks. So last time we were talking, we were in the process of finishing
Letters from Hawaii.
Letters from Hawaii, and I was reading Curse of Lono.
Oh yeah. Did you finish Curse of Lono?
I did. It was actually wasn't that long, and it's actually it kind of reminded me of our trip.
Oh fuck yeah! I gotta fucking
in a
read
weird
that.
way. And do you want to go? Do you want to start? Or do you want me to go?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, tell me.
Okay.
Yeah, tell me about the end of Curse of Lono.
Well,
fucking dogs being fucking assholes back here. So we're gonna dog barking in the background for a minute.
I won't go into. I'm gonna vaguely skip across just in general, but I'll take away the key points. Essentially, it's in Barry Gonzo's style, where he gets paid to go on a trip to cover something he's barely going to cover, and he and Ralph Steadman go with him. And Steadman brings his family.
Christ.
and they basically stay. They're supposed to cover the Honolulu or Waikiki Marathon. This is 1980, and it's a sort of a wacky little like adventure. As soon as obviously it's just Gonzo stuff. So somewhere along the line that he acquires like a Samoan warhammer or a war club,
dude.
By the hotel in Waikiki. I don't know how they got it, but like it's sort of like it's like a Chekhov's is it Chekhov's pistol or Chekhov's
gun? Yeah,
Chekhov's gun, and I believe it's in very very Gonzo fashion he covers the marathon, but he does it in a way that's sort of like iceberg, like a bigger picture of like where boomers are at the state of the late 70s, early 80s, where like the revolution had failed and people got really apathetic in the 70s, and all of a sudden in the 80s we're going to be about health and running.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, it's interesting to see, because I mean that's like the thesis statement of like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but it's interesting to see it like carried into the 80s, like something.
So you have like the next thing and the next thing, and like there's always like a overall arching theme of like where the zeitgeist is, and it just happens to be running. So the whole idea is they're going to stay in Honolulu for a couple days just to cover that. Their big deal was to go to Kona or go to on the Big Island. And so they get to Kona, and it's in the middle of winter, and there are storms everywhere. And I had the same experience because I was supposed to go on a snorkel trip that got canceled twice for bad chop. And this was also the same situation where they go into this place, and there's just the storm is taking out their guest house, and it drives Ralph Steadman and his family crazy. They actually leave, and I think they leave their dog. Force Hunter to take care of it, and all Hunter wants to do is really go fishing. He wants to catch the big marlin, and he does this whole thing where the whole story kind of parallels, and he splices the death of Captain Cook, the last voyage and death of Captain Cook. I forgot who wrote it. I have to look it up. But he's splicing that. He's splicing in like letters from Hawaii, which is really cool.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, so he's like splicing, like he's like clearly he's basically trying to. He's not trying to, but he's like kind of identifying the god with the god Lono.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is the one.
It's kind of like the adventures of the crazy foreigner coming to Hawaii and having a bunch of fucked up shit happen to him.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And eventually does catch a marlin, and I think he bashes it with the Samoan War Club. And then decrees, in a drunken stupor, I am Lono.
Fuck yeah.
And eventually I think what happens, I mean, that's spoilers, but like it's actually a sort of a rare, I found out it's a very rare book. There's only
Thompson gonna fucking die at the end of it. Like,
yeah. I don't know.
Spoilers, he survives.
So he ends up staying there for like another 6 months, like just going crazy and stuff. So
Damn.
That's pretty much it. That's the story.
Cool. That's pretty based. That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's still it's got all the wacky stuff in there, but that's the synopsis.
That's dank. Yeah, I finished. So yeah, with Letters from Hawaii, well, I'm definitely gonna have to check out Curse of Lono now because that sounds incredible. I finished Letters from Hawaii. That was really fascinating. All of his like, I love how much it's like Mark Twain spends in that book being like, yeah, capitalism really, like capitalism and all of these American wasps have really improved the native lifestyle so much, and then he just spends like the entire book just verbally abusing and like sexually harassing all the fucking natives. That goes on this like long ass. he's like, oh man, it's so good. They're doing so fucking well. Also, every fucking Hawaiian is like a horse thief and like a con man. Well, not a horse thief, but specifically like he talks about all these times where he gets like swindled by locals to like getting these like shitty like overridden horses, and they're just about to drop dead from exhaustion. This is a hilarious book. Like if you want to learn about like racist stereotypes of like Hawaiians that you didn't know existed, like this is a pretty good spot.
I don't know why I didn't get that when I first read it, but I must have been enamored by it. I was driving. I had it on audiobook.
Yeah, I had it on audiobook. You remember the part where he
I was busy driving while I was listening to stuff. I don't remember.
Here's an interesting thing I was thinking about as well, because he mentions this sort of like mysterious Mr. Brown character that he's kind of like hanging out with like the whole time, who's like just like his Ralph Steadman. Like it's interesting. I suspect that Mr. Brown is a literary invention, and that like their sort of adventures together are kind of or sort of invented or perhaps exaggerated for just for some narrative effect and to like lend a little lend a little bit of razzle dazzle to his travelogue. Because there's even a part in there's even like a part like halfway through it where like Mark Twain like roasts, like he's like roasting the fucking like missionary travel logs, where he's like, yeah, all they do is they go to the fucking foreign country, talk about how nice it is, how cool the locals are, and then they like throw in a couple of like pop culture legends and like a few stories, and like they're all the fucking same. And like literally Letters from Hawaii is exactly that. Like like I think he's doing that on purpose. Like I think that's a joke. Like it's not like it was like really envisioned as like a book. I mean, it's just like it's like just a series of letters he was writing to. I mean, it's like a San Francisco newspaper or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was either the Sacramento Bee,
some California newspaper he was like writing for.
And also, I mean, like the dude was a humorist. So
yeah, like, exactly. He's like a comedian, so he fucking so his shit's like funny.
Yeah.
So I also think that like Mr. Brown is like a like sort of his inner monologue. Like that's how kind of like I'm reading it, because like Brown is like he's basically like a huge asshole with like he's like a huge asshole who like complains all the time about everything, and he's got like no common sense, and he's always like trying to like he's always like getting scammed, and he's like trying to like he's always trying to find like he's always trying to find like relics and like bones and like artifacts and shit. He's always just got this like fucking like crap that he's like trying to like pick up and like bring home with him. And like there's that whole chapter where he like tries to steal the fucking he like tries to steal the stump that's got like the fucking like the British memorial to Captain Cook on it. Like
I mean, what I remember from that book essentially was the ship was it was rough seas getting there, He goes to Congress, or he goes to the Parliament procedures.
That was the best part of the book. That was really cool.
Yeah.
He goes and like hangs out and spends a bunch of time with the Hawaiian Parliament, and that's a really fascinating historical document.
He goes to Kona and waxes poetic about the coffee and talks shit about Captain Cook. What a dick!
Yeah. He hangs out in Maui. He doesn't really talk about Maui because he says he just basically has so much fun there. He's like, yeah, I just fucked around in Maui for like a week, it's like I didn't write about it. Sorry. And then it kind of climaxes. Yeah, he goes to Kona. He tours. He tours all the interesting spots on like the west side of the Big Island, and then the sort of end of the book is it's kind of funny. He did like the exact opposite of our vacation, where we kind of started up in we started the sort of like northwest side of the island and then went down to Kilauea, and then like the sort of like the end of our vacation was working our way back up, back up the coast there. He does the opposite. He goes to he hits all the coffee stuff, kind of works his way south, and then the last chapter is him hanging out at Kilauea, which was really cool.
Okay,
but he talks about how he talks about like the fuck. I wonder how long that like little hotel like right on the fucking crater lasted. He talks about staying in this really nice hotel that's like right on the fucking crater, and I'm like,
there's one there now, so it could.
I'm like, fucking white people, man. Like, we're gonna stick this hotel right here. Yeah, no way this could go wrong at all. I like his description of he was just like, oh yeah, I'm going to see a volcano, like whatever.
Oh,
and like
sorry.
he keeps getting like closer and closer to it, and like the closer he gets to it, he starts realizing like how fucking big it is, and he's like, oh fuck. He's like, no, this is like actually like really impressive. Like, but yeah, that was very very entertaining read. Highly recommend it. It is really really incredible. I started reading I don't think I talked about this on the pod yet, but I picked up another book, Legends and Myths of Hawaii, or maybe it's the other way around, by fuck, I don't remember his fucking name. I'm gonna Google him. It's basically one of the kings of Hawaii. Kalakaua, is that the guy's name? Oh yeah. So the other book I picked up that I've been reading is Legends and Myths of Hawaii by David Kalakaua, who was I guess he was the one of the last kings of Hawaii. I think there was one more guy after him, and then all the plantation owners kind of like took over and had their little coup. But basically, it's interesting because Mark Twain actually talks about him he actually talks about him a little bit in Letters from Hawaii, where he talks about like meeting him when he's still like a prime minister, because at the time they have like a constitutional monarchy, and I guess when the king dies and he doesn't have a successor, then they just like elect a guy. So it's like all the sort of like the noble families get together and just kind of appoint someone. And so he ended up being the next in line after, I think it was Kamehameha the fourth or fifth dies. And but in the Hawaiian history, like the last three kings of Hawaii, that happened like 3 times in a row where someone just died. They didn't have a fucking heir, and so they're like, no, okay. But yeah, he's a really interesting guy. So then, when he was king, he ended up kind of publishing this book of this sort of like book of myths and legends, because he was pretty keenly aware that the Hawaiian people were kind of, on their way out as like a, sort of like an independent nation, and because he the introduction, usually I recommend just checking out the introduction to this book, Steve, because it's pretty cool. It's about like,
okay.
It was about 50 pages of just like him talking about he just kind of talks about like the state of Hawaii and like, what they think the history of the Hawaiians is. And it's really funny because they because you can tell, because this book in particular, it's like, these are all like educated by like English aristocrat, like Hawaiian nobles. So it's like, they have this like really sort of weird, he's in the introduction, he's like trying to tie the origin of the Hawaiians like all the way back to like the 12 tribes of Israel and shit, you know. So there's this really weird it's this really weird like Euro-Polynesian fusion of like, you know, what everyone kind of assumed that history was like at the time. And yeah, so you know, he covers, you know, he covers a little bit of history of the Hawaiians, and then the first, and then it's sort of like his retelling of just like a bunch of like famous stories and stuff, and they're souped up a little bit, you know, so they kind of read like the preface to it kind of talks about them as sort of like gothic romances almost. They're these like Victorian, like very, you know, they're sort of like these Victorian, very flowery, very very ornate sort of retellings, right. Europeanized like retellings of like Hawaiian legends. So it's like really it's really cool. And like the first story is basically he's just straight up, he's like, yeah, this is just like the Hawaiian version of the Trojan War, basically, and where there's like basically this guy who like builds a fortress on Molokai. So like Molokai, there's this like fortress city on Molokai that's basically just Troy, and the guy, you know, he goes and like kidnaps some fucking beautiful princess and basically everyone's sick of this fucking unassailable fortress, like fucking everyone around.
Was he like, you know, was he trained in the Western canon at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely. Right. So
there's a whole okay.
It's really weird. Yeah, it's one of those. It's not exactly. I wouldn't.
I like the same problem with
the word
Virgil.
Authenticity here is it's like a very strange thing, because it's like, I mean, he is like descended from like Hawaiian nobility, so it's about he's as fucking Hawaiian as it gets. And then it's like culturally though, it's like the whole you know, their whole government system is like, you know, put in place by like the English basically.
Yeah.
Like,
so I was just it was like sort of a chance for me like to put a whole like it's a strange thing because we owe a lot of Greek mythology to like Roman poets that preserved it or retold it.
Yeah.
Like
So yeah, so even the Greek stuff is like not exactly
Virgil
Greek.
Stuff, so,
yeah.
And I kind of have, for example, a lot of those Trojan War that we know, the famous parts, not the Iliad, but the actual fall of Troy, the sack of Troy itself, is told from the Aeneid.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had this whole thing where like a lot of, I mean, the thing is like, and part of it is because when the Greeks were telling these poems, these Homeric epics, they were this was all kind of common knowledge. So you didn't really have to reference it. So it's like if we talked about stuff post 9/11, we know what we're talking about. But 100 years from now, what does that mean? Like, can someone recount like another account of this? You know,
but yeah, this.
Sorry, go ahead. I mean, like that was my whole thing about like a Aeneid was like a Virgil was like a lot of times he, the whole point of like the Aeneid itself was to kind of like retrofit the Roman history into the Greek canon or mythological epic tales. So there's a lot of weird like and it was written during the time of Augustus Caesar, so he's doing a lot of like Hail Caesar stuff in the middle of like
interesting.
Projecting the fates of the family. Like it's sort of like one day a family will come up and like, for example, he goes to Carthage. And this is well after Carthage has been destroyed by Rome. And there's a scene where he goes to Carthage and like this is with the whole Dido and all that stuff. And there's like it's sort of like projecting, or at least, you know, it's sort of, you know what it is? It's like the prequels.
Yeah.
It's like the Star Wars prequels where it's like someday this might happen. And, you know, what's your name? My name, like, you know, like, oh, young, like Plank would make fun of, like, young Luke Skywalker, meet young Han Solo. And they shake the little baby hands. Stuff like that. Like, it's just sort of, oh, did you, yeah, like that sort of weird stuff where it's like, oh, he was there the whole time. But I don't know. I'm rambling.
But yeah, I highly recommend checking out.
Sorry.
As far as like authenticity goes, it's like culture and oral narrative stuff is, it's already like it's subject to like mutation according to like the time period,
Yeah.
and like that's kind of that's just kind of the cool thing about oral tradition, is that it just mutates, and like, it's always, it's always going through its like millions of iterations. And there's other, I've got one other compilation of Hawaiian mythology I'm probably going to dive into after this. That's more of a it's a little more like scholarly. I mean, uh, it's a little more scholarly than like this, which is sort of written to be like a readable book of stories and stuff. But so that one's more about like, okay, what is like the sort of like classical information we have without like a lot of like bells and whistles and frills and stuff. But yeah, this I do highly recommend this book because it is well written and it's like really fun to read. And it's just like lots of just like epic battle stories and stuff. So if you're into and it like literally starts with like all these like crazy like allusions to allusions to like the Aeneid and the Iliad and stuff. So like definitely I recommend it for you in particular.
Next question was that, do you think that was for Western audiences?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's, I think that he was probably a person who recognized I think he was a person who probably recognized the value of like, some of the things that the West was able to give Hawaii, which was like their sort of, sort of like their government their systems of government, and definitely like their philosophy, and contributions of like art and literature and things like that. And then I do think he was like, definitely like it, because I think they also published it in the Hawaiian language too. And there are like, he does like recount a lot of like big like sort of like nationalist folk heroes, like the guy who like basically when Kamehameha II was like, we're fucking done with like the religious codes and stuff, and he basically when he eliminated the taboos, there was some like high priest who was like, who basically tried to fight him on it and like get an army together, and he recounts that story, and like it's pretty, he gives a pretty it's not exactly a shitting on, it's not exactly shitting on like the high priest who was kind of like defending the old ways of Hawaii and stuff. So I mean, there are sort of like nationalist folk heroes that get a pretty decent treatment in the story. So yeah, once again, it's not entirely, there is stuff where he is poking and prodding, and he was trying to, I know historically that that king was trying to like talk to Emperor Meiji and trying to start kind of a pan-Pacific like Polynesian sort of a Polynesian alliance of kingdoms, so that they could kind of get rid of like foreign influence. So he's definitely keenly aware that without help and without like banding together, that like Hawaii's like done, like we're getting fucking settled and colonized, and it's probably going to be part of the United States. So he's definitely aware, but he treats the entire subject with a lot of subtlety and a lot of dignity. So very fast, like I said, fascinating read, highly recommend it. I'm not done with it. I've read the first 100 pages or so, but really good.
What was the name?
It's Legends and Myths of Hawaii by David Kalakaua.
Okay. Good. All right. I read one short little book by Bettany Hughes called Venus and Aphrodite. This is like an impulse buy because I'm fascinated by like the pagan. This is like we're switching religion. We're switching pagan deities. We're going back to Greece and but this is basically a story of like of the sort of not a story. It's basically sort of a biography, but it's a legend of like of section of it's called she calls it biography of desire, It's essentially it's like a recounting through archaeological finds. It's very brief book, but of like the historical culture of a deity of what became like a lust, or at least first it was like a
probably a fertility goddess or something,
yeah,
right?
fertility, and then it became like kind of a lust in sort of how it sort of rides the line between sex and violence, and through history and culture, how Aphrodite's been, she's like as the Beatles and Hard Day's Night would put it, a keen mixer.
Yeah.
Like the grandpa character in Hard Day's Night. Basically, he's always stirring shit up, and that's kind of like Aphrodite's kind of role in a point in ancient Greece, like the whole Troy thing. The Judgment of Paris was, Aphrodite's kind of doing, or at least Aphrodite won that judgment and knew what to do to get to win it. And anyway, things like all that. I mean, I'm kind of surmising it way too much, because it becomes like it's a little bit of everything. Even as like the Christians took over, it became like there's a whole Madonna whore complex, and of course, like the Virgin Mary is they kind of weave her into the Virgin Mary. They which is kind of a weird thing, if you ask me, but sort of a female kind of graceful cat. Because I think of all the other deities, she was probably
there's a direct line between like Aphrodite, Venus,
only
like Virgin Mary, and
only
then like
Athena
just kind
was
of
like,
just or Diana, or like goddess, just that kind of
Artemis was
goddess worship.
Artemis was prickly, and Hera or Juno was petty. So there's not like Aphrodite was always about like not thinking about the consequences of her action, or just like kind of going for it, kind of nothing. When like when the sexual mind or lust comes around, and you're just like, all I can think about is these few things. So there's a lot of that, and I even in like the modern day, even like modern conceptions, like I always not love, but the whole recurring theme of like even in James Bond movies where there's Ursula Andress coming out from the ocean, it's a very Aphrodite thing. She's coming from the ocean. It's a nice little. It was like a Valentine's Day read. You could just do it on a day. Nice little book.
Cool.
That's it.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say.
Yeah. I got 2 shows as well.
I got before I forget about it, because I was I remember last time we were talking about this will be an interesting thing, because I know on our last pod we were talking about sort of Neil Breen versus rockers, and it's sort of like authenticity, depicting sort of depicting a scene authentically in film, and definitely reading the reading the Legends and Myths of Hawaii is like, brings up questions of like, sort of like cultural authenticity and like what that means.
Sure.
But I watched, Red Rocket. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to spend a lot of time on Red Rocket, because it's the fucking, I don't want to turn it into the Red Letter Media show, but this is,
we are very big fans of Red Letter Media. We recommend you check them out. Also, if Mike, Jay, we know you don't do this, but if you want, like, please, or Rich Evans, or anybody. We'll take Jack Packard too. You guys would love to
don't
chat.
roast a Jack like this.
Jack
Jesus.
actually responded to one of my tweets. We were talking about Palm Springs of all places, and the movie about the movie, where I told him like the cheap indie rom-com equivalent of, how like there's like a forest.
Yeah.
For horror movies, the forest is the cheapest place that you don't need a permit to shoot in, and for like indie movies, it's like the desert. We're just shooting geometry.
Yeah. No, dead ass. But
anyway,
definitely, that movie is fucking crazy. It's just like, it's just about this burnout, like porn star, like grifter who gets tired of living in Los Angeles, and he just decides to, like, just fuck off, and he decided he kind of gets like the longer the movie goes on, the more it's like, oh, this guy got like run out of Los Angeles, but he ends up back in his like hometown in Texas, and he's kind of trying to like he's trying to bum a place to stay from his like estranged wife, and it's just about him being just like a low life scumbag in this like little shitty town in Texas. But it's like it's weird because like in the Red Letter Media review of it, they were talking about how they were saying it's like, oh, it's like the polar opposite of a Harmony Korine movie, but it reminds me a lot of Spring Breakers. But like if Spring Breakers was from the point of view of James Franco, like instead of like the girls.
It's one thing. It's like what I like about them is they've kind of taught me over the years that you didn't have to agree with them to like them.
Yeah.
And I agree with a lot of things they say. And one of the few things I actually I watched Harmony Korine before I knew who these people were. So like, I don't like every Harmony Korine movie. I think I hated Trash Humpers. And I'm just like, I'm done. I hate this. Is awful. Like other movies, like I had a hard time getting into, but I really liked. Some movies made me weep. Mr. Lonely, obviously, from I'm always crying at the end of it. But
it's very, it's very similar in the sense that
I like Harmony Korine, so
yeah, it's very similar. I mean, Harmony Korine stuff is like very like heavily stylized. Or specifically, like I'm thinking of like like Neon, or I was gonna call it Neon Demon. Spring Breakers has that like very like neon colored, like everything's like fucking just like dripping wet, like Florida like neon lights and stuff.
Yeah, there's a movie,
and this has a very similar. It's almost like this is almost like like an evil Wes Anderson movie, where it's like. I would say like Wes Anderson likes to do like the stunt casting of like, oh, here's my celebrity friend that I like in my cool visually appealing movie with like the bright colors and shit and like quirky characters, but
say something kind of weird and absurd,
yeah, like this movie is like it's buried in it's buried in like hyper realism. Because I guess the director does a lot of just like he doesn't cast like professional actors, or he casts like just like a couple of them, but like people you haven't heard of, and he likes to cast more like real people.
I haven't seen Tangerine, but the clips I see from Tangerine is like that when they shoot, because it's a whole like a shot on an iPhone or whatever. And it's a specific street in L.A. in Culver City. I'm like, I know where that is. Like, oh, yeah. It's on Sepulveda down by Washington. I used to do shows down there every Tuesday, and it was less desirable for lesser desirable rates. Sorry.
No, it's good, man. It's good. But yeah, it's like he's got this eye for like, I think the director's name is Sean Baker, and he's got this eye for just like weird fucking locations and just weird people, and the whole movie it reminds me a lot of Harmony Korine, because there's a lot of these like night shots of just like like walking around, driving around at night in Texas, just by these like big ass power plants, and like the lights are like really fucking pretty, and there's all this like crazy there's all this kind of like crazy gel lighting going on, so it's so weird. It's like the movie is super beautiful. It's like visually it's super fucking beautiful, and then like the characters in it are just like the most like greasy fucking disgusting people, and like the main character is like such a fucking scumbag, and like it is like it gets like hard to watch. Like it's like this shit where like it gets like it just gets the guy's like. The main character is just like a fucking like walking cringe compilation, and it's fucking incredible. And it's another one of those movies that remind like Rockers, where it's like the director is just sort of like fearless in his like, yeah, I'm just gonna go and like just shoot at this fucking like at these like weird crusty locations, and and so I highly recommend it. Because I know we're sort of Harmony Korine fans here. Yeah. It's similar to that. It's a little more based it's definitely more grounded and sort of based in reality. Like Harmony Korine's movies are kind of fantastical. A
Yeah,
little,
which is like especially for its hyper realism. You know, like
yeah. Well, I mean, like Trash Humpers is like a fucking
Gummo.
like.
I think of Gummo.
I don't even know what. Yeah, I think Gummo. Yeah, Gummo is a pretty good.
Where it's like the weird fairy tales of like some say he's God it takes to be a legend and. I still have a hard time with them like selling like shooting cats and and like for me that scene in the bathtub.
Oh yeah, we're eating the fucking spaghetti. That's like the fucking grossest shit.
It's just like the brownest water.
Grossest shit.
And I'm looking.
There's nothing
course,
like
Werner Herzog's like I was, and of course Werner Herzog famously commented on the movie saying I was extremely moved by the bacon taped to the wall in the bathroom scene.
It's like there's nothing in the movie that's like physically repulsive. It's just like all of the guys like actions is just like it's disgusting because like everything he does is like so real and like so based in reality that it's like this like happens like to people like everything that happens to this fucking dude is just like this kind of shit just fucking happens to people like all the time, and it's like fucking horrible. And like, I don't know, I like. There's not really like. I would just watch it.
Watch it's Red Rocket or Gummo.
Fucking. I'm talking about Red Rocket.
Okay. I was still talking about Gummo.
But Red Rocket is fucking. No, Gummo is like actually physically like disgusting. Like. I just mean that like Red Rocket. It's like there's nothing that's like fucking like, it's not like there's like gore or.
But doesn't it have a soundtrack with Sleep and Buddy Holly put together in the same soundtrack?
Yeah.
Just saying.
It's a really quiet. That's part of like why it's so uncomfortable too. Is there's basically no music. It's one of those where it's just like super.
Yeah.
It's one of those just like every super crippling, awkward thing that happens is just like you're just there in real fucking time, just like in these like excruciating fucking wide shots, and it's so fucking brutal. Like it's just like watching all these people just hang out and exist is like fucking. This makes my fucking skin crawl. Like it's fucking hilarious. It's funny. It's like a funny movie too. Like it's like the dialogue is incredible, and it's one of those movies like I can't even tell if it was like written that way or if they just got people who were like really good at. I can't tell if it was just like really people who were like really good at improvising and just kind of like being like natural people. Because there's some stuff where I'm like almost certain I'm like, okay, these are just people just kind of like shooting the shit and like improvising, and then some stuff is like, that's probably written, but it's like, it's one of those things like it's like Rockers where it just like starts to like blend. It's kind of really blurs that line of like of reality in like a really interesting way. And it's another thing where I'm like, Neil Breen just can't fucking figure this out. Like, like the whole time I was watching Red Rocket, I was just like, I was thinking of that scene of the fucking two girls talking, and I Am Here Now, where it's like they're so. It's
so natural until like the dialogue actually scene has to start. It sounds like a real conversation until the movie has to do its thing.
It's like almost like a real conversation, and then it like turns into and then it just like turns into like a Neil Breen written monologue, and God, it's just. And it's like, he can't even like direct the actors to do improv right. It's like he's got to be like, oh yeah, talk about your fucking clothes or shirts or whatever. And anyway, we talked about this all last podcast. So I'm done. Yeah, I'm done with Red Rocket. I watch it. It was fucking crazy.
All right, great. I'm having a hard time trying to keep it live because I'm reading the updates on the Crane invasion. I'm just like, oh shit.
I got, dude. Yeah, I got.
Are you watching it too? I'm trying not to make a joke out of it, or even stuff like, we're talking about Neil Breen or whatever.
Yeah, really like fucking. Yeah, I'm sure there's. It's. Yeah, I'm sure this podcast seems real fucking necessary tonight.
I know. Perfect timing, right? I saw two shows. I'm currently watching one. I finished one was like have you seen Party Down?
No, what it's at?
This is the most appropriate show to be talking about
Sorry,
during a Eastern European invasion, but it's about these. It's a comedy sitcom with Adam Scott, the dude from Children's Hospital,
Rob Corddry.
No, the other, like not the other one. There's like the brown, the guy with the black hair.
Dude, I'd the only, literally Rob Corddry's the only one I know.
His name's like Kevin Marino, I think. Anyway, and Lizzie Kaplan and some like sort of famous, sort of like, oh, I know those guys from that thing, you know. And it's basically about a group of like a really like ne'er-do-well catering company in Los Angeles doing like, you know, well, this is it's like hits me in a certain spot, like doing events like this or working in events like this. I had never worked for a catering company, but I've seen them all the time.
Yeah.
But they're all actors that are trying to make it, and it's like catering is kind of the role you do if you're a working musician or actor trying to like make it, quote unquote, because that has the odd time hours. You could work during the day, or you do business things during the day, and then like you can make some money at night doing these events. You might run into somebody.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a really funny show. There's some great little tidbits. I think there's one episode that I liked where they do a backstage event for this sort of like Marilyn Manson type character, but he's like tired of the vapid success and like the vapid and vain and trophies, sort of symbols of success with money and groupies and things like that. And he just wants to be a normal like stooge getting like yelled at. So he talks one of the guys into swapping makeup roles. so like he becomes the bartender and everybody's just yelling at him about the drinks and how like he's just like elated, like, oh my gosh, they're yelling at me.
What the fuck?
It's actually a really well written episode. It's pretty funny. Anyway,
that sounds pretty good. What's it? Is it streaming anywhere? Where's it streaming?
Hulu. The reason I saw it on Hulu is because I decided to watch Pam and Tommy, or Tommy and Pam, which is the sort of story of Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee's.
Yeah. I remember.
It's
talking about.
Yeah. Is
it good? Is it worth watching?
Sure. It's okay. It becomes more interesting because like they have like the people I was interested in, and I'm more interested in the caper of this guy. It was like Seth Rogen's this like ex porn star turned like handyman carpenter who's working on Tommy Lee's like new master bedroom. If that's what it's called. It was still called master bedroom.
Notice that as we get further into the gig economy in the post OnlyFans era, we're getting a lot of ex porn star characters in media.
Interesting.
I feel like that's more. I feel like the ex porn star is like way more of a common thing that you run into now.
It was sort of like a Boogie Nights, like just after Boogie Nights era. So like early, because it's like the early. This is the mid '90s.
Okay.
But anyway, Tommy Lee does the whole like treats him like shit kind of moments where it's like, he changes his mind after they fix it, you know, and then like doubles up the price, and it's like there's an incident where it's like, you know what, you guys are fired, and it's like, okay, well you still owe us the money. I'm like, no, I don't. I just fired you, so I don't have to pay for all the work you just, you know, like that kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I left my tools there. No, my tools are collateral, man. Like, it's like, what? And so it becomes this, I mean, like, it's sort of this weird roller coaster of emotion because you're like, fuck Tommy Lee. And then it kind of gets into this whole thing about, like, Tommy and Pam, so Seth Rogen, you know, his character steals a safe where he hides all his guns and this little tape of of their honeymoon, and because he's in the industry, you know, that's the whole half the story is them, you know, doing the whole like looking for, you know, using the internet to kind of sell these tapes with the producer. And so, but I'm more in, of course, like there's a little scene where like eventually he gets he gets found out by a private eye that Pam and Tommy hire, and he's in the middle of like this is great for you and me. He's in the middle of like the end of the Court of the Crimson King, where like they're singing. He's smoking a joint, and it's like, and the Court of the Crimson, bam, door bumps open. Like the PI kicks the shit out. I'm like, no man, it's King Crimson, man. Oh,
Jesus Christ.
This is like my music nerddom, like just falling through. I'm just like anything with King Crimson, and I'm in.
Yeah, fucking A.
We'll have to talk about the documentary.
You can tell fucking music dorks wrote the show.
Yeah. It's like, oh, all right. They got, Fripp gets some money. So there's, anyway, but the movie veers away from them as characters and turns into like the plight of Pamela Anderson post this thing getting out, and like her whole emotional, which is like you should probably focus on that with an emotional reality, with emotional core. That's where it should be. Mm-hmm. I just want to know about those two dudes who, I want poetic justice for Tommy Lee.
Yeah.
or poetic justice for the Seth Rogen character.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he's just a he's not a schlub. He was, he had no problem working this gig. It was just like, he got shat on by a rich and famous person, and like there's no point of like, oh my god, I should have treated that guy better, And maybe he doesn't. maybe that's a more realistic reality that he probably, that's not a point where it's like, I got what I deserved kind of vibes. Mm-hmm. Or even like Pam getting upset that, there's a point where like, did you pay the guy? And Pam's like, of course he did. Like, no. There should have been more to that a little bit, where it's like, I want, of course, Pam to be more pissed off at Tommy for like treating a guy like dirt, and then of course she didn't. Like, there's a scene in the opening episode where she's like has a Jack Daniels shirt on, and Seth Rogen's character kind of comes in and goes, "Oh my god, sorry," and then she, then that's the kind of the catalyst for him getting fired. It's like, you're perving on my wife, bro.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, no, I wasn't, I swear. And so there's a lot of that, and that's so. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll probably check it out. I'd watch
fun.
that. It sounds entertaining.
It's a fun watch. It's not really like it's nothing in depth or
not exactly a banger, as they say.
It's not high art. It's just an entertaining story.
It
kind of goes all over the place with like the honey, like the courtship in Mexico, where it all went down, and you get like. I'm also starting to notice a lot more equality in full frontal nudity.
Yeah,
I've, like there's a lot more like in HBO, and I've seen more nude men. It sounds so wrong. I've seen more nude men on HBO than I have nude women.
Yeah, like, dude, fucking that's, I mean, like full frontal cock is like that's like the next frontier in like film nudity, because I mean we've basically it's not
like the most flattering
women have basically been completely naked in movies since like the 80s, so it's like full just like slinging cock, like that's the way of the future. That's like that's one of the last taboos here.
And yeah, like I said, I'm not like, I don't have a problem with it. It's just like I've noticed that's a trend more where they're making the discrepancy.
Yeah,
of course, it's like this situation. It's all even like the whole idea. I think the actors do not have the same anatomy as Pam Anderson or Tommy Lee, so it's all fake to that point, to my knowledge. And that's I mean, you do what you gotta do to make the show work, and I think Lily James does in Sebastian Stan do a great job portraying those characters, and even especially the demeanor of everybody, with like Pam being kind of soft spoken and but like sort of.
Is Pamela Anderson still alive?
She is. Yeah,
she's alive. Who the fuck am I thinking?
Anna Nicole
fucking
Smith.
Dead.
Anna Nicole Smith.
Yeah, Anna Nicole Smith. That's the one who's dead. Yeah.
And Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. Yeah. No shit. Yeah, I'm getting my big titty blonde.
They have like Jason. Of course, everybody's talking about Jason Mantzoukas playing like voicing Tommy Lee's penis. That's like that's the big talk where it's like, and I'm watching this and I'm like, this is the same movie where they're talking about the plight or like the kind of consequences or the sort of the whole dramatic element of Pam's like post leak like career and her dealing with it on the immediate side where she's like suing and everybody thinks it's sort of that whole like I said, the Madonna and the horror complex where it's like, oh my gosh, she did a sex tape, she's so seedy and slimy and that kind of like that sort of vibe, you know. And of course it's also like there's a lot of 90s culture vibing around these days. I think The Ringer has something to do with that. Mainly because I think there's a whole, and I think also it's sort of like where the last decade has been about the 80s because like Gen Xers and grew up in the 80s are now running the business. They're of that age. So we're like, we want to see 80s stuff. Now we're going to get this group of people that we want to see 90s stuff. And I'm like, do we want to see 90s stuff? I don't know if like Woodstock 99, we broke that down pretty well. We're like, yeah, 90s weren't all correct. We looked nice. We looked highly upon it like right after it happened, but not exactly like 20 years after it happened. It's like what I want to actually this is a way off the topic thing, but deep stoner question for you. Because we are so postmodern, and I use that word very liberally a lot, but we have this thing where what's going to be our sort of like once you know it's going to be about another 10 or 15 years before our generation becomes the executive cigar smokers running everything. What's going to be our nostalgia trip, because we're getting nostalgized
true,
by 80s people who grew up in the 80s, people who grew up in the 70s, and then now people who grew up in the
it's going to be
we're just like, hey, we're just going to reinvent the 60s because we did. That's still kind of pure in a way.
Yeah. The 60s never goes out of style.
No.
Our thing is going to be it's going to be like you know what's going to be? It's going to be like pop punk and like scene kids and like sort of like My Chemical Romance emo stuff. Like all that, all the stuff from like the stuff from like the mid 2000s. Like that's
all you gotta do is listen to and that's what I now call beefing it. You know, that's our Spotify playlist. Is got all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I hated it. I never liked it then, and I play it ironically. I put it in that playlist because we all eventually were. I don't know if it's ironic anymore, but we listen to it ironically now. like.
Yeah, so, it's fuck. Yeah, no, it's definitely. Yeah, I think like that's the. It'll be weird to see the movies that are like. Yeah, it'll be fucking weird to see the movies that are just like, oh, this is about like. I'm curious to see what exactly people will be. It'll be people nostalgic for being in fucking middle school around that time. So I suppose all of our teen drama movies are gonna like be just like cringe scene kids fucking raw XDing at each other and shit like that. That's probably gonna be our nostalgia. It's weird because like more of my it's fucking weird. Because our generation is kind of it probably won't be this generation, but maybe the next generation. Because I feel like all those like old Nickelodeon shows, like the so-called 90s cartoons, have kind of made a comeback, because of like that big 90s nostalgia thing going on right now. But I think a lot of people's kids are sort of like re-experiencing those 90s cartoons like right now, because like a lot of them are streaming and a lot of them are because that shit was just gone for like a couple of years, like after, like when I was. And also this is the thing where for a while like media would just fucking go away. Like you'd watch all this shit when you were a kid or whatever, and it's like not like they would put fucking HR Puffin stuff on fucking VHS or whatever. It's like that, like home video didn't even get invented till the fucking 80s, you know? So it's like you would, the shit you watch as a kid would just disappear. But we've kind of got this, I mean, our current generation might even just continue. It might just be like continue to have like 90s nostalgia, you know, because all of that media is still around, and it's like we still have kids able to like grow up with it in the same way that you know, in the same way that we did, you know, and it, you know, and then it never really goes away either in the same way that it used to. I think that's kind of like you know, kind of the same, you know, we have this kind of like delayed adulthood thing going on with our current generation, where it's like, yeah, our movies and our favorite movies and TV shows, it's like we can just buy them and have them and keep them forever, and kind of just, we never have to stop being nerds and dorks, and we never just sort of like stop immersing ourselves and stuff. So yeah, who knows? It might just be people nostalgic for like the same shit over and over again forever now.
That's scary to me. It's very scary. I think.
Yeah, we are hitting a plateau. I mean, every generation thinks that they're the fucking doom and gloom generation. So, or that they're the last. I think it's just a syndrome of getting older, where you're like, yeah, surely the world has to end because everything is terrible. It's like, no, I think the world is always just awful, and that we just, as you just get older and become more aware of it, you see more of the horrible things that happen constantly. So it's like, you're like, oh wow, it's like, surely the world's going to fall apart. It's like, no, it never does. It's because it's just always like this.
Very stoic of you. Yeah, I think.
Oh no, I'm not stoic at all. I have massive crippling fucking I'm not part of the stoic. Like, just don't let it bother you, man. Just fucking retreat from the world's problems. No, it bothers me deeply and immensely. I have crippling anxiety, so don't.
This is where my Epicurean
misinterpret me.
My inner Epicurean is just like, yeah, okay, let's go party.
Brother, I may have to get going pretty soon.
Oh, that's right. You gotta go. Because I was going to talk about Euphoria for a minute. I was going to watch the show. Yeah. Have you seen it
yet?
I watched an episode. I watched 2, and I'm like, I don't like it. It's not for
I know.
me.
I kind of want to watch it just because of the I kind of want to watch it just because just for the meme of it, you know, just because I think it would be funny. Maybe we should
actually watch it and do another one.
Be for book club fucking Euphoria just for shits and giggles.
I have my thoughts on it, and I think because I wasn't a fan of Freaks and Geeks, and I'm not a fan of high school like coming of age dramas.
Yeah, high school was like one of the worst times of my life, so I hate revisiting that. So
and to watch people like younger people visit it, and like there's a couple points where they talked about, oh yeah, I'm realizing that was a thing that I didn't have to go through, but like at the same time, like. It's sort of like a new sort of eye opener, but at the same time, I also just go, it's high school.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I spend basically all my time. I spend all my time drinking and doing drugs to like forget everything that happened to me before I was like 25. So I'm. You know, I might have to just get like super fucking faded, shit faced, and like watch this to be able to relive it. But
yeah, so, okay, you know, we'll get through this together. We will.
We'll hold hands and watch.
It's
it together.
Dark right now. We're going through it. The world's going through a little bit of a dark phase with this new thing. We're gonna.
I just want to point out. I just want to point out that there's an incredibly brutal, like fucked up Ero Guro hentai anime called Euphoria. And it's basically just Saw, but with like murder sex games. And I saw that like Euphoria was trending like a few weeks ago or whatever. And I was like, why the fuck is everyone talking about this crazy murder porn anime? I'm like, did all the fucking like Zoomers finally like figure this out? And I was like, oh, they're not even fucking talking about that. I'm like, I'm just a fucking sicko.
I mean, from what I've seen from the show, it's sort of a run you through the gutter kind of show as well. So
yeah, that's
my vibe on it. Where it's like, oh, these high schoolers, and it's like, oh, they're juniors. They go, oh my, and they're doing okay, and, and they're all depressed. like on drugs.
I'm like, I wish I was like cool enough to have been like on drugs all the way through high school. I would have probably been. I probably would have been way fucking happier. I was like not cool, so I didn't know any. I had no drug dealer friends or like anything like that in like high school. I was like so fucking sheltered. I didn't even know anyone who smoked weed. Like, like straight up. That's how fucking lame I was. I went to high school in fucking California. I don't think I smoked weed till I was like 23 or something like that.
Yeah,
I was a fucking loser, man.
I was in a very. I was part of a group of friends that were very good at undermining the more popular class of kids or of status, where we like overrode like the prom queen and king once. We got like, you know, we managed to like, you know, like there was like, for example, there was one guy winning.
You elected the most hideously deformed hunchbacks and monsters to the prom cool, just nice, for shits and giggles.
No, we elected a super cool, nice guy. But he was such a nice guy that he's just like, oh, he's a very kind of aw shucks dude. And he was very much like, oh, it's okay. Like, I'm just, you know, everybody loved him. But, you know, to the point where, you know, he didn't ask to be prom king and
oh shit.
And it's like ended up like, no, you're going to be like we have these people and we have, so we kind of like, I wasn't really like, I was a part of this group that kind of undermined a lot of things. There was like one ASB, someone was running for ASB president on a single ballot, like no one was running against him, so everybody wrote in that same dude the year before, and I think he possibly won the popular vote.
Oh my god. That's great. Cool. That's cool.
It was a good moment.
Dude, I didn't even go to my fucking prom. I took my girlfriend at the time to a Peter Gabriel concert. That's how fucking pissed I was. Yeah, we went to go see the it was the orchestra one.
Oh, as the same one we first met.
I think we were both at that show, actually.
Yeah.
Like we didn't know each other yet, but we were both there.
My prom was not on that night, so I managed to do both.
Yeah.
It was a good show. I liked it.
Yeah. I wasn't cool in high school, but I did more based shit, like seeing Peter Gabriel.
Oh man. So okay, I'll let you go. It's you gotta get to work, and I gotta work in the morning, so.
Hell yeah. Well, all right, brother. Well,
we have homework. I have some more
homework.
books.
We'll watch fucking Euphoria. We'll be Euphoria buddies. We'll stream it together.
Watch party.
All right, watch party. Next time on Beaver Book Club, you're gonna get the drama. All right,
Take
brother.
care,
I will catch you soon.
All right.
Adios.